Hey guys, tonight we slip into a time where the night wasn't tea, something you escaped with melatonin and blackout curtains. It was a living, breathing thing. Picture this. The air smells faintly of smoke from the hearth you just smothered. The only light comes from a single candle stub guttering in a clay dish. Outside, the wind whines through the thatched roof, and a dog barks somewhere far away. You're not in the 21st century anymore. You're in the Middle Ages. The bed beneath you, not exactly a Sealy Posturepedic. It's a wooden frame packed with straw, sometimes moss, sometimes a few tufts of old wool that might have seen better days when they were still on the sheep. You feel the prick of the straw through the linen sheet and the faint, suspicious scuttle of something alive under the blanket. Welcome to Bedtime, Medieval Edition. And before we go any further, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, tell me in the comments where you re-listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lie on your back, staring into the darkness. It's thicker here, more absolute than anything your modern eyes have known. The moon might peek through a crack in the shutters, but mostly it's pitch black. You can't see your own hand. The silence feels heavy, except for the occasional rustle your wife shifting beside you, the baby mumbling in its sleep, the snort of the pig sleeping under the bed. Yes, a pig. In winter, warmth was precious, and livestock often doubled as nighttime radiators. Romantic, right? You shift your weight, trying to find a soft spot, but the straw crunches, and a puff of dust tickles your nose. You sneeze, and the sound echoes like a gunshot in the tiny wooden room. Back then, people didn't have the concept of 8 straight hours of rest. The night was divided, the first sleep, the watch, and the second sleep. Historians still argue whether this pattern was purely biological or shaped by lifestyle. But records suggest most folks fell asleep soon after sundown, woke for a while in the middle of the night, then slept again until dawn. This strange rhythm wasn't seen as strange at all. It was just how sleep worked. The waking period between sleeps was a time for prayer, reading, sometimes even visiting neighbors. You could call it the world's first night shift, except unpaid and probably cold enough to freeze your will to live. You pull the blanket tighter and listen. Somewhere outside, a rooster crows too early, confused by the flicker of the moon. Someone might be out there, to a night watchman with a lantern, or a neighbor stumbling home from the alehouse. The medieval night was alive with sound and superstition. People believed that evil spirits prowled after dark. To leave the safety of your bed was to risk more than frostbite. And yet, that middle of the night hour when others slept was when real life sometimes happened. Lovers met, prayers were whispered, secrets were made. You roll onto your side, careful not to wake the small child sleeping near your legs. Beds weren't private spaces then. Entire families shared them, parents, children, sometimes even guests. The idea of a personal bed would have sounded absurd. A noble might have a separate chamber, but even their privacy was rare. Curtains offered the illusion of solitude, not the reality. A faint scratching makes you freeze. You wait. It happens again, tiny, deliberate. A mouse, probably. Or worse, one of the many insects that called your bed home. Medieval hygiene wasn't exactly 5-star. Mattresses weren't washed. Sheets were seldom changed. And a clean bed just meant one that didn't visibly crawl. Yet, somehow, people survived. Their immune systems probably deserved medals. You close your eyes again, but your mind drifts to how strange it must feel to sleep when the dark itself feels like a presence. Back then, night was more than a time of date, was a realm. A space where boundaries between waking and dreaming blurred. No streetlights, no glowing screens, just the whisper of wind and the slow creak of timber. There's a kind of magic in it, though. You can imagine medieval villagers telling bedtime stories by firelight. Maybe someone recalls a tale of saints or ghosts, or perhaps a rumor about the local lord's scandalous new mistress. They'd murmur until the fire died low, voices soft, steady, like waves on a shore. Funny thing is, you probably wouldn't survive one night here. No heater, no deodorant, no antibiotics. Even the bed could kill you-infested fleas, carried diseases that wiped out half of Europe. Sweet dreams, right? Still, there's something grounding about it. The rhythm of the natural night, the quiet surrender to darkness. Modern you spends half the night fighting it, checking phones, watching Netflix, doom scrolling. Medieval you just lay down and accepted that the world belonged to the dark for a while. You feel sleep tugging at the edges of your mind. Somewhere between exhaustion and peace, you begin to slip into that ancient rhythm, the first sleep. The fire is dying, and outside, the night thickens like velvet. As your breathing slows, you sense how close life and death once were, one bad cough away, one rat bite, one winter chill. Maybe that's why they valued dreams so much. When the world outside could vanish overnight, dreams were the only place to meet hope again. And so you drift off your straw mattress, creaking softly, the embers glowing faintly red, your world wrapped in darkness. The medieval night closes its hand around you, gentle but firm, whispering, "Sleep while you can. The watch will come soon." You wake suddenly. No alarm clock, no phone buzz, just a subtle pull from within, like your body knows it's time. The air feels heavier now, cooler. You don't know how long you've been asleep, but the fire has sunk to faint orange coals, and outside the shutters, the village is buried under moonlight. Welcome to your first sleep, the part most people today have forgotten ever existed. Your body stretches beneath the itchy wool blanket, muscles creaking like old door hinges. The others around you shift and snore softly. The baby's breathing is a slow rhythm. Your wife murmurs something incoherent, and you can just make out the silhouette of your eldest son, curled up like a question mark near the foot of the bed. Somewhere near the wall, a chicken rustles in the straw. Yes, chickens sometimes shared sleeping quarters, too, because predators didn't respect property lines. You stare into the shadows. This is that ancient middle world between sleep and wakefulness. Historians still argue whether this first sleep pattern developed naturally or was shaped by daily labor, by sunrise work and sundown exhaustion. Whatever the cause, it's strangely human. People would sleep for about 4 hours, wake for 1 or 2, then drift back for a second sleep until dawn. You're living in that lost hour now. You sit up quietly, careful not to wake anyone. The cold air bites at your face. Your breath ghosts in the dark. The faint smell of smoke, sweat, and straw mixes in your nose. Not pleasant, but familiar. You rub your hands together for warmth and reach for the candle. A spark catches. A small flame blooms, trembling like it's afraid of its own existence. The light is enough to paint faint outlines the wooden beams overhead. the bundle of clothes on the floor, the crucifix on the wall, slightly crooked. Back in these times, waking at night wasn't weird, it was expected. People would use the interval for prayer, quiet reflection, or even household chores. You might whisper a few Ave Marias, or check that the animals in the barn are still alive. Sometimes, a neighbor might visit just casually in the middle of the night. Imagine that your friend knocking on your door at 1:30 a.m. to borrow firewood or gossip about the miller's wife. Medieval insomnia wasn't treated with pills. It was socialized. You leaned back against the wall, letting your mind wander. The silence hums, not empty, but alive, an orchestra of small sounds. The pop of a coal, the drip of melting frost outside, the distant hoot of an owl. In the absence of machines, nature had the only soundtrack. Your thoughts drift toward dreams, the ones that still cling to you, half-formed, half-vanished. You remember fragments, walking through a forest made of mirrors, a wolf that spoke Latin, a woman with hair like river reeds who told you not to wake too soon. People back then believed dreams had meaning. They weren't random electrical bursts in the brain. They were messages, demonic or prophetic. If you dreamed of water, it might foretell purification. Dream of fire, and perhaps God was angry. Dream of pigs, and, well, maybe you just needed better bedding. There's movement near your feet, a small scurry. You pull the blanket up instinctively. The medieval bed was a whole ecosystem: fleas, lice, bedbugs, and sometimes rats. You can practically feel them now, tiny explorers mapping your ankles. It's unsettling, but, ironically, one of the reasons people didn't sleep straight through: itching kept them awake. A quirky but plausible reason why the first sleep ended naturally. Your body just said, "Hey, human, it's bug time." You scratch absent-mindedly and chuckle softly. If you ever brought a medieval peasant to a modern bedroom foam mattress, climate control, lavender candled aid, probably assumed they'd died and gone to heaven. And if you told them you struggled to sleep despite all that comfort, they'd probably smack you with a broom. Outside, a faint thud, maybe a door, maybe the wind. The night between sleeps was also the hour of fear. Witches, spirits, thieves, this was their shift. You whisper a small prayer, just in case. People believed that between midnight and 3 lay a dangerous time when the soul was closest to wandering. Historians still debate how much of this fear came from religion versus sheer darkness. After all, in a world without streetlights, anything unseen could be imagined. You glance at the candle again. The wax has dripped into strange shapes. One looks like a tiny skull. You laugh quietly. It's the kind of thing you'd text your friend at 2 a.m. if texting existed. But here, laughter dies. You rise quietly, blanket sliding off your shoulders like a sigh. The air nips at your skin, cold, damp, alive. You grab a cloak, something scratchy and smelling faintly of smoke, and push open the creaking door. The night outside greets you like a cathedral made of frost and whispers. The moon hangs swollen and pale over the thatched rooftops, and your breath turns silver in the air. Welcome to the waking hour between the two sleeps. The world feels different, now's lower, raw, half-dreaming. You can almost sense that humanity itself is between heartbeats. Somewhere in the distance, a cow shifts in its pen. A dog barks once and then stops, as if realizing sound itself feels intrusive right now. This, historians say, was when medieval people came alive again for a moment. You step into it, careful not to trip over a stray bucket, and listen. Someone nearby is whispering prayers. The faint glow from their cottage window flickers like a heartbeat through the fog. The devout often used this time for devotion, the watch, they called it. You might kneel by your bedside, thanking God for the day's survival and asking Him kindly not to send plague, famine, or a particularly judgmental priest tomorrow. But not everyone prayed. Some did other things. You smirk to yourself. Records mention couples using the waking hours for marital congress because after the first sleep, the body was rested. Minds were calmer, and privacy was well as private as it could get when your kids and chickens were in the same room. You can't help but imagine it now, the world's least romantic setting, complete with snoring relatives and the smell of turnips. But hey, people made do. There's a soft crunch under your boots as you step into the frozen yard. The stars above are absurdly bright without modern light pollution. They stab the darkness like silver pins. You've never really seen the night sky before. Not like this. You feel small, but not afraid, just part of something vast and ancient. Across the lane, an old man shuffles out of his hut carrying a lantern. He nods at you, mutters something about checking the goats. You wave back, and he vanishes into the fog. People back then didn't separate the sacred from the ordinary. Checking livestock, saying prayers, sharing a secret drink, they all belonged to the same midnight rhythm. You wander toward the small church at the edge of the village. The bell hasn't rung. It won't until dawn, but sometimes the priest rises early, too restless for sleep. You peek through the half-open door and see the faint flicker of candlelight on stone walls. Inside, the air smells of wax and damp wood. The priest kneels, his lips moving in silent prayer. You think of how, for him, sleeplessness isn't a nuisance. It's an invitation. It's strange today. We'd call this insomnia, a sleep disorder. But for them, it was spiritual time. Waking in the night was like standing at a border between worlds, half in this life, half in another. Historians still argue whether that waking period was intentional or simply accepted, but the way it wove into daily life suggests they saw meaning in it. You feel the pull of warmth again and turn back toward your home. The door greets you with a groan as you slip inside. Everyone's still asleep, breaths slow and even. You move quietly, like a ghost, among your own family. You sit by the dying fire, adding a log. Sparks dance briefly, lighting up the room just enough to reveal the humble chaos. Shoes by the hearth, a wooden bowl half filled with stale bread, a cat curled on a stool. For a moment, you just sit. The room hums with quiet life. You think about how strange it is that your modern world fights the night electric light. 24-hour shifts, blue screens while theirs embraced it, surrendered to its rhythm. You wonder if maybe, deep down, your body still remembers this way of sleeping. Maybe that's why you wake at 3 a.m., sometimes for no reason. Maybe it's not stress or coffee. Maybe it's ancestry calling. You smile faintly at the thought. You reach for a small jug of alias, ale, because medieval water wasn't exactly safe. You take a sip. It's sour but comforting. You sit by the fire, letting it warm your fingers. The silence stretches, soft as wool. You think about your dreams, Erliatha, talking wolf, the woman with the river hair, and realize something. They don't feel like dreams anymore. They feel like visitors you left outside the door. And then, just as your eyes start to droop again, A sound breaks the stillness. Footsteps, light, deliberate. You turn, pulse quickening. For a moment, every superstition you've ever heard fills your head. Witches roaming, spirits seeking bodies to borrow, the restless souls of those buried without prayer. Your throat tightens, the door creaks, a shape moves in the dim light. It's your neighbor, old Margaret, wrapped in a shawl. She looks startled to see you awake. Couldn't sleep, she whispers. Thought I'd check on the cow. She's calving early. You exhale, smiling. Fear dissolves into something almost tender. You nod, offer her a bit of the ale, and she takes a sip before disappearing again into the fog. The night feels friendlier now, like an old companion who just wanted to remind you who you are. You crawl back into bed, sliding under the covers beside your family. The mattress sighs under your weight. The fire pops once, and your mind drifts again. The first sleep is over. The second waits just beyond your eyelids. The line between dream and waking thins again like mist over water. You close your eyes and let it happen. You wake up before dawn again, the damp air pressing against your face like a cool cloth. The flicker of the hearth has long since gone out, and the single blanket you share with two others barely keeps the chill away. Someone nearby coughs, a low, hollow sound that tells you they've caught what the villagers call the sweats. You pull your legs closer and think, another long day ahead. The first order of business isn't breakfast, it's survival. The wooden bucket in the corner needs to be emptied, and you silently hope the cesspit behind the cottages hasn't overflowed with the night rain. The smell alone could wake the dead, or at least make you wish you were one of them. You trudge outside, bare feet sinking into mud that never seems to dry, even in summer. You pass by the well, the village's lifeline. You're grateful that at least the water is relatively clear today. No floating straw, no suspicious slime. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers actually drank mostly ale because the water was dangerous, or if that's just a myth born from later centuries romanticizing drunken peasants. But when you taste that first sip of cold, metallic water, you understand why ale was the safer bet. Fermentation killed things that water couldn't back inside. Breakfast is simple. A crust of barley bread and maybe, if you're lucky, a smear of last week's lard. It's chewy, coarse, and filled with tiny bits of husk that stick to your teeth. You think of modern bread, soft, sliced, maybe toasted, and laugh quietly. The medieval version could double as a weapon if thrown hard enough. Your day begins when the church bell tolls. It's not a gentle reminder, it's a demand. Time isn't your own. It belongs to the land, to the Lord, to the church. You grab your wooden rake and head toward the fields. The ground is slick and uneven, the smell of manure heavy in the mist. You work alongside others, farmers, children, even an old woman whose hands are more soil than skin. It's repetitive, back-breaking work. Dig, plant, hoe, repeat. You don't count hours, you count shadows. The sun moves, your back aches, and you dream not of riches or travel, but of a warm meal and an early night. And then there's the sound, the faint clinking of metal from the road. You glance up to see a figure on horseback, armor gleaming faintly under the pale sun. A knight. To you, he might as well be a creature from another world. His boots alone could buy your entire cottage. He doesn't even look at you, just passes by, mud splashing from his horse's hooves. You wonder, does he even know how lucky he is? Still, There's a strange kind of peace in your routine. The monotony dulls the fear of hunger, of sickness, of sudden raids. You and your neighbors share everything: tools, food, gossip, even grief. When someone dies, and someone always does, you gather together, pray over the body, and bury them just outside the churchyard wall. There's no marble headstone, just a wooden cross that might not last the next storm. By noon, your hands are blistered, the heat grows thick, and flies swarm your face like you're their personal buffet. A small boy beside you giggles, chasing them with a stick. For a moment, you laugh too. Humor, even small, fleeting bits of it, keeps people alive here. You once heard a friar joke that medieval farmers didn't tan from sunlight. They just got permanently dirt-stained. The church bell rings again, midday prayer. Everyone stops, wipes their faces, and turns toward the steeple. It's a brief pause, a reminder that life, however grim, still has meaning. After work, you trudge home, sore and half asleep on your feet. The air smells faintly of smoke. Someone nearby is baking bread, or trying to. You nod at a passing neighbor, and she smiles weakly, revealing a single remaining tooth. You both know tomorrow will be the same, and yet there's comfort in that sameness. Predictability, even in hardship, feels safer than the unknown. Back inside, the cottage is dim and smoky. Dinner's cooking, a thick pottage of barley, cabbage, and maybe a hint of pork bone for flavor. You grab a spoon, dip in, and burn your tongue. It's terrible, but it's yours. Someone outside yells a small commotion. You peek through the crack in the door and see two men arguing over a broken cartwheel. One swears it was sabotaged by the other. They shove, curse, and then suddenly stop when the priest passes by. The tension breaks, replaced by quick murmurs of apology. Here, the church doesn't just save souls, it keeps the peace, or tries to. As night falls, you lie down again on the hard straw. You scratch at the lice bites along your arm and whisper a small prayer, not for wealth, but for quiet dreams and a tomorrow without fever. Somewhere far off, a wolf howls. You pull the blanket tighter, feeling the ache in your back settle into something almost familiar. The world outside might be dangerous, but here, for now, you're safe. You think about how people centuries from now will look back at this, your ordinary, mud-streaked existence, and call it the good old days. You smile in the dark, wondering if they'd still say that after one night in your bed. You tug your linen nightshirt over your head, the fabric coarse and scratchy, and then carefully knot your nightcap beneath your chin. The simple garments hug your body in the way only centuries-old tradition can shape comfort born of necessity rather than style. The linen feels rough against your skin, but it's your shield against the night, insulating you against cold drafts, biting pests, and perhaps even the faintly imagined gaze of spirits lurking in shadowy corners. Nightwear in medieval times wasn't just about warmth, it was a social statement. The quality of the cloth, the precision of the stitching, even the color, if you were lucky enough to afford dye, marked your place in the household hierarchy. A wealthy merchant or minor noble might slip into soft, finely woven linen that smelled faintly of lavender or herbs, while a laborer like you wears scratchy, straw-filled layers that barely keep the chill at bay. Historians still argue whether the hierarchy in sleepwear was purely symbolic, or if it also had practical implications for health, warmth, and survival. Either way, slipping into your nightshirt is a ritual in itself, a preparation to enter the world of segmented sleep. As you settle back onto the straw mattress, the first assault of night pests reminds you why these garments exist. Fleas and lice crawl invisibly beneath the fabric, biting at exposed skin and testing your patience. You scratch absent-mindedly, cursing under your breath, and remind yourself that it's nothing personal. These tiny creatures have been cohabiting human homes for millennia. Bedbugs, though largely hidden during the day, become more active at night, and a stray rat tail or two isn't unheard of. It's a tactile, living reminder that medieval sleep is not just rest, it's negotiation. You adjust your nightshirt, pulling it tighter around your wrists and ankles to minimize contact, almost like setting up a personal fort. The nightcap, ridiculous as it might look to someone from your world, serves both a practical and symbolic function. It keeps your head warm, conserves precious body heat, and signals, subtly, your attention to household propriety. Imagine a peasant in a tattered nightshirt sharing a bed with siblings and livestock. An observer could instantly judge social standing based on the neatness of folds, the cleanliness of seams, or the presence of small protective charms sewn into the lining. And yes, protective charms were a thing. Tiny pouches of rosemary iron filings, or other folk remedies, stitched into the hem, were believed to ward off evil spirits and restless dead. The overlap between hygiene, superstition, and fashion is astonishing. You lie back against the straw, feeling its uneven, lumpy texture press into your spine. The night is alive around you, not silent. Somewhere in the room, a pig snorts, a cat twitches its tail, and the faint breathing of your children creates a rhythm that is both soothing and slightly claustrophobic. Sharing your bed with animals is pragmatic. They provide heat, but also reminds you that privacy in medieval sleep is a luxury few could afford. You adjust the nightshirt again, noticing how it protects your arms and chest from stray scratches and bites, while the cap shields your head from the cold air seeping through the thatched roof. You think about how nightwear interacts with human behavior. In cold climates, a good nightshirt could prevent hypothermia. In crowded households, it could reduce direct contact with pests and body fluids. But it also marked identity. Scholars still debate whether these clothing choices were consciously designed to enforce social order, or if they simply emerged from the practical needs of survival. Either way, the nightshirt and cap become more than garments. They are tools, armor, and silent social statements. The candle flickers as you turn slightly, the shadow playing across the walls. Your family lies around you, each wrapped in their own layers, each part of the communal ecosystem of sleep. Even in the darkest hours, the social signals are clear. Who is wealthier? Who is careful? Who is prepared? You adjust your nightshirt one last time, feeling the familiar scratch of linen against your skin. Warmth, modesty, protection, and status all wrapped into a single bedtime ritual. You breathe deeply, the night drawing you back toward rest, knowing that tomorrow, work and survival will demand every ounce of the endurance this simple garment affords. You feel the unmistakable bite of a flea along your ankle and scratch reflexively, your fingers raking through the coarse linen of your nightshirt. The sting travels up your leg like a tiny electric shock, a reminder that your bed is not just a place of rest, it's a miniature ecosystem. Lice crawl invisibly, weaving between hair and clothing, and somewhere beneath the straw, bedbugs are conducting their nocturnal feast. You wiggle and shift, trying to find a comfortable spot, but the movement only seems to provoke more tiny invaders. You mutter a quiet curse, In any modern bedroom, this would be unthinkable, but here, it's just part of the nightly rhythm. Survival comes with an itchy price. Around you, the house is quiet, except for the soft rustle of a sleeping child and the occasional sigh of a cat or dog nestled into the blankets. Yet the darkness feels alive beyond the tactile annoyances. In whispers, villagers pass along stories of demons, witches, and restless dead who wander at night, seeking to disrupt the living. One woman mutters under her breath about a ghost that has been seen walking across the common fields, dragging chains in its wake. Another warns the children that witches cannot stand the smell of rosemary and garlic. So tuck those into your pillow if you value your soul. Historians still argue whether these tales were genuinely feared or largely exaggerated social tools to instill caution among the young and impressionable. Either way, the effect is the same. The night feels larger, more dangerous, and alive with hidden eyes and intentions. You glance at your sleeping siblings. They shift occasionally, scratching themselves in small bursts of discomfort, completely unaware of the folklore surrounding their nocturnal disturbances. The biting insects are enough to provoke minor terror, but the stories circulating among the villagers amplify every creak of the house into potential menace. People interpreted every odd shadow and unfamiliar sound as evidence of supernatural forces. It's fascinating and terrifying at the same time. A cough or creak might signal nothing or everything. You probably want to survive the mental tension if you didn't. To understand the cultural context of fear and superstition that shaped nightly vigilance, the candle guttering in the corner throws jagged shadows across the room, making the familiar straw piles and furniture seem like potential threats. Night terrors, or what modern scholars might call sleep disturbances, were imbued with meaning. Dreams of falling, being chased, or encountering shadowy figures were often taken as omens or messages from the spirit world. A restless night could lead to accusations, whispered warnings, and sometimes even community-wide panic. You feel a shiver, realizing that the itch of fleas, the whisper of wind, and the half-perceived movement of shadow are inseparable from medieval fear itself. You think about how people attempted to manage these nightly terrors. Herbs, charms, and prayers were strategically placed under pillows or by the hearth. A sprig of rosemary by the bed, iron nails tucked into corners, and spoken invocations to saints or ancestors were standard procedures. Some villagers even slept with small protective animals, cats or dogs, believed to ward off evil spirits. You tug at the edges of your nightshirt, adjusting it as a physical barrier against both pests and the imagined spiritual threats. Even sleepwalking carried implications of fear and superstition. A person wandering through the dark could be accused of possession or bewitched influence. You remember an older villager recounting how a boy once sleepwalked out into the barnyard and awoke in the arms of neighbors who swore a spirit had guided him. Historians still argue whether these accounts were factual or social exaggeration meant to police behavior, but they demonstrate how inseparably woven sleep and fear were in medieval consciousness. Despite the discomfort, you can't help but feel a strange admiration for this ritualized engagement with the night. People didn't just endure the fleas, lice, and bed bugs, they integrated them into a complex web of superstition, social norms, and symbolic understanding. The creepy crawlers beneath the linen are minor annoyances compared to the rich cultural tapestry that surrounds them. You settle back slightly, feeling the prickling of the bites fade into background awareness, and let the whisper of history lull you closer to the second phase of sleep. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters, and the candle flame dances in response. You breathe in slowly, adjusting your nightshirt around your arms and neck, imagining the ghosts, spirits, and witches that may or may not be watching. You drift, aware that in this world, the physical and the supernatural coexist seamlessly. Your body is fatigued, your mind alert to danger, and yet there's a rhythm, Hera, strange lullaby of fear, survival, and folklore. As you close your eyes, you feel the weight of centuries pressing softly around you. Every itch, every shadow, every whispered story is part of the same nocturnal dance, a reminder that the night is never truly empty and that human vigilance and imagination have always walked hand in hand. You awaken again, but this time it's different. The world is quieter, sharper, almost antiseptic in its discipline. You find yourself within the stone walls of a monastery, the air cool and smelling faintly of incense and damp stone. There's no drafty cottage, no shivering animals, no itch of fleece, just the rhythmic hush of a place built entirely for devotion. And yet, sleep is a stranger here. Monks rise in icy darkness, their feet whispering over cold flagstones, heads bowed, half asleep yet fully committed to the ritual of matins. You follow them silently, your own body stubbornly clinging to warmth under your rough robe. The chants begin low, almost imperceptible at first, a murmur of sound threading through the stone corridors. You can feel the vibration in your chest, the deep, rolling intonation of ancient Latin prayers echoing in vaulted ceilings. The sound is hypnotic, like the heartbeat of the building itself, and you understand how it could draw a half-conscious mind into devotion. Historians still argue whether the grueling schedule produced spiritual clarity or simply exhausted the body into acquiescence. But standing here, it doesn't matter. You feel the discipline seeping into your bones. The night is dense, the darkness almost tactile, pressing against the skin. Candles flicker in iron sconces, their orange glow revealing rows of sleeping monks in narrow cells, heads tilted on wooden pillows. Some cough softly, others shift in the straw mats that pass for beds. You notice the precision of the ritual. Even in exhaustion, each movement is deliberate, each chant measured. There's a strange beauty in it, a paradox, where human frailty meets relentless spiritual purpose. You trudge to a central chapel where the air smells stronger of burning wax and old wood. Here, matins is at its peak, and the monotone chant rises into a steady rhythm. Half-awake monks sway slightly as they intone prayers, their eyes heavy but unwavering, hands clutching prayer books or rosaries. You can almost feel the internal battle. Mind wants sleep, spirit demands focus. You probably won't survive this level of discipline without developing nerves of iron or divine assistance. The schedule is punishing. After matins, there's a brief pause for meditation, then lauds, and eventually prime at first light. Meals are minimal, often a thin gruel, and physical labor punctuates long stretches of prayer. Sleep is deliberately fragmented, segmented to instill vigilance, humility, and obedience. Even your own thoughts feel policed. The rhythm of the day and night is dictated by bells, not your natural circadian cycles. Historians still debate whether this routine was designed to deepen piety or whether it was a method of controlling human behavior through exhaustion. Either way, the effect is undeniable. You wander the cloisters, feeling the cold stone under your feet, tracing your hand along walls polished by centuries of habit. Occasionally, a novice stumbles, half asleep, catching himself before falling. You remember whispers of older monks who swore that these nights of near insomnia brought visions, messages from God, or even prophetic dreams. In the flickering candlelight, you see why. The mind, teetering on the edge between sleep and wakefulness, is unusually receptive to impressions, ideas, and inspiration. You pause by a small window, watching moonlight spill over the garden. Frost clings to the grass, and a lone owl sweeps silently across the sky. There's a serene terror here. Exhaustion makes every sound sharper, every shadow more ominous, yet also more poignant. Monastic sleeplessness is a dance on the knife edge between corporeal need and spiritual aspiration. You tug your robe closer, shivering, and feel a quiet respect for the endurance required to live by this schedule day after day, week after week. Even mundane acts are sanctified. Drawing water, sweeping floors, tending the garden, each chore performed in near darkness becomes a form of devotion. Every small task is a meditation, every stumble a lesson in humility. You realize that the monk's segmented sleep is not merely about waking and working it's about aligning human rhythm with divine order, forging discipline and presence from exhaustion itself. As the first hints of dawn touch the horizon, you settle briefly on a bench, letting your heavy eyelids flutter shut. For a moment, sleep seems almost attainable, but the bells will call again soon. Still, you understand now why medieval people, especially those devoted to spiritual life, embraced fragmented rest. It is a structured vulnerability, a conscious yielding to the demands of faith, while negotiating the body's natural need for sleep. The night has become a teacher, and you, a student, learning lessons in patience, endurance, and devotion. You drift off again, surrendering to the pull of sleep, but it's not the ordinary, restful kind. Your mind slips into the vivid, liminal space between consciousness and slumber, where reality is pliable and shadows stretch unnaturally. Dreams here are more than fleeting images. In the medieval imagination, they are messages, signals from God, warnings from demons, or whispers from the departed. You tumble through surreal landscapes, past flickering candlelight and twisted trees, where faces morph and vanish, where the laws of physics obey only narrative necessity. Historians still argue whether people genuinely interpreted dreams as divine or infernal communications, or whether such beliefs were largely social constructs designed to enforce morality and caution. Either way, the experience is visceral. You find yourself walking through a misty village at twilight. Figures loom in the fog, faces familiar yet impossibly distorted. You hear murmurs of neighbors' voices, telling tales of portents and omens. Someone says a raven on a rooftop is a harbinger of death, while another swears that a deer crossing your path signals unexpected fortune. In medieval Europe, dreams and signs were interwoven with everyday life. A bad night's sleep could be as significant as a council meeting or a market day. You probably won't survive, ignoring the symbolic universe your ancestors inhabited, where every shadow, sound, or insect bite could carry hidden meaning. The dream shifts, and now you're in a cathedral, light filtering through stained glass in a kaleidoscope of colors. A choir hums faintly, their tones like a distant heartbeat guiding your journey. A shadowed figure approaches, speaking in a language that feels simultaneously foreign and deeply familiar. Every movement is charged with significance. Here, a tilt of the head. There, a hand lifted in blessing. Dreams were taken seriously, not just for prophecy, but for moral guidance. They instructed, warned, and sometimes punished the dreamer for misdeeds or negligence. Even a modern psychologist might nod at the subconscious value of processing guilt or anxiety. Yet the medieval mind transformed these nocturnal images into spiritual narratives. Your surroundings blur, and now you're hovering over a battlefield shrouded in fog. Armored figures clash, banners flail in the wind, and the air smells of wet earth and burning timber. Someone whispers that this is a vision of impending disaster. In reality, it might be the echo of fears absorbed during the day, magnified by the night. Villagers and nobles alike interpreted dreams like this as omens of plague, famine, or war. Even minor details, a crow landing nearby, a cracked pot, a flickering candle, could be woven into elaborate narratives predicting future misfortune. You scratch at your arms, feeling the lingering phantom bite of fleas, reminding you that dreams coexist with the corporeal world. Now you're alone in a dense forest, moonlight barely piercing the canopy. Shadows stretch into impossible angles, and the whispers of the wind sound almost like words. The medieval mind assigned moral and supernatural significance to these nocturnal wanderings. A dark path in your dream might represent temptation. A sudden fall could indicate divine displeasure. A bright clearing, hope. Some dreamers kept journals to interpret recurring symbols, often consulting clergy or wise elders. Historians still argue whether these interpretations were systematic or purely anecdotal, yet they shaped behavior, social decisions, and even legal actions in their time. You stumble across a stranger lying in the grass, pale as moonlight, whispering riddles that you half comprehend. Dreams were also seen as a bridge between the living and the dead. Visiting spirits could warn loved ones of danger, or lingering souls could communicate unfinished business. The dream world was a space where morality, survival, and spirituality intersected. People believed that ignoring or misreading these nocturnal messages could have real-world consequences, sickness, financial ruin, or social disgrace. Through it all, there is a strange serenity beneath the tension. The mind, teetering on the edge of awareness, allows for insights inaccessible in the waking hours. Dreams, whether divine, demonic, or mundane, are rehearsals, warnings, or contemplations of what might be. You drift closer to waking, carrying the weight of symbolic landscapes and cryptic messages, understanding that sleep in this era was never passive. It was a dialogue with forces, seen and unseen, a nightly negotiation with fate, fear, and possibility. As your eyelids flutter, you notice your breathing slow, your heart settling into a rhythm. You feel the gentle tug of consciousness pulling you back to the room, to the straw mattress, to the rough linen nightshirt that shields you from insects and chill. Dreams leave impressions, lingering like faint whispers of another world, nudging you to pay attention, to respect the unseen, to integrate the nocturnal wisdom of centuries into your waking understanding. You awaken, or do you? Your mind hovers between wakefulness and slumber, a hazy liminal zone where gravity feels uncertain and shadows stretch unnaturally. Slowly, you rise from the straw mattress, half aware of the bed's discomfort, half caught in the vivid dream remnants still lingering in your mind. The room smells faintly of herbs and candle smoke. but the nocturnal hush feels charged, almost electric. In medieval thought, this is the hour when sleepwalking or noctambulation becomes more than an oddity. It's a potential conduit for spiritual intrusion. One misstep, one misplaced gesture, and villagers might whisper that you are possessed or under a witch's influence. Historians still argue whether these interpretations were deliberate tools of social control or genuine belief in supernatural forces. But for you, the stakes feel very real. You step lightly across the floor, toes brushing against stray straw, each creak of the wooden boards echoing like a warning. A candle flickers and throws jagged shadows across the walls, making the familiar seem menacing. In the culture surrounding you, sleepwalking was considered highly significant. People feared that the body, unmoored from conscious oversight, might act on hidden impulses, interact with spirits, or unwittingly perform rituals that angered divine forces. Even mundane wandering, reaching for water, peeking out a window, or touching a family member could be interpreted as an ominous act. You probably won't survive the social scrutiny of this behavior without careful explanation or protective charms. You remember the whispers of neighbors, the girl who walked into the barnyard at midnight and emerged claiming she had been guided by spirits, the boy who muttered strange phrases in his sleep, prompting a family to consult the local priest. Sleepwalking was more than physiology, was morality in motion, a nightly performance scrutinized by the unseen eyes of the community. Remedies ranged from simple laying protective crosses near the bed, sprinkling holy water, tying a small rope to keep the sleeper in place, to elaborate rituals intended to expel demonic influence. Some households even kept dogs at the bedroom door to herd wandering sleepers safely back to their beds. You stumble slightly, nearly knocking over a chamber pot, and laugh quietly at the absurdity, yet a flicker of unease tugs at your spine. In some interpretations, sleepwalking was not passive at all. The body could be used by spirits or witches to enact hidden agendas. Those who wandered freely at night were at risk of being accused of collusion with otherworldly forces. In some grim accounts, accusations of nocturnal misdeeds fueled broader claims of witchcraft, tying individual restlessness to communal panic. Historians still debate the degree to which these cases were psychologically genuine versus socially manufactured, but the consequences in life were undeniably real. The experience is tactile. Your bare feet press against the cool, uneven stone or straw, your nightshirt brushing against your arms as you navigate. Every sensation is magnified, the faint hum of a mouse in the corner, the whisper of a door rattling in the wind, the flicker of candlelight against the wall. The half-conscious mind is hyper-aware, interpreting innocuous stimuli as omens. Your hands tremble slightly, either from fear or the physiological effects of disrupted sleep. And yet there is a strange rhythm to the movement, a kind of nocturnal choreography you didn't consciously learn. You pause in the hallway, feeling the weight of centuries of superstition pressing down. Sleepwalking is not a trivial quirk. Here it is a symbol, a cautionary tale, a manifestation of human vulnerability. Villagers saw these nocturnal wanderings as a window into the soul, a moment where hidden intentions or spiritual influences might surface. You tug at the nightshirt and smooth your nightcap, aware that even the way you move could carry meaning beyond yourself. Despite the tension, there is also a strange, gentle beauty in this half-wake state. The world is softened by darkness, the mind freed from rigid rationality. and even the fear of possession has a kind of poetic resonance. Every step, every whispered creak, every fluttering shadow connects you to generations of sleepers who navigated both the corporeal and supernatural with a cautious, intuitive grace. You reach the threshold of a door and pause, listening to your own heartbeat, marveling at how human perception, fear, and imagination intertwine when the body acts without conscious guidance. And then, as your eyelids grow heavier, you settle back into bed, letting the nervous energy drain into the straw beneath you. Sleepwalking may have been viewed as spiritual danger, but it is also a window into the human condition, a reminder that the mind and body often move in tandem, yet independently, that fear and superstition shape experience, and that the line between waking and dreaming is far thinner than you ever realized. You exhale slowly, letting the night embrace you once again, half conscious, half dreaming, entirely immersed in the layered world of medieval sleep. You blink awake to find yourself not in a straw-filled cottage or monastery, but in the narrow, fog-draped streets of 17th century Salem. The air is cold and heavy, scented with wood smoke and damp earth, and the faint clatter of wooden shoes on cobblestones creates a steady, unsettling rhythm. Night falls early here, but sleepless nights are common not from discomfort, but from fear. The townsfolk move cautiously, whispering under their breaths about witches, specters, and curses. You probably won't survive the paranoia of this place without keeping your head down, yet curiosity pushes you forward. Every house seems to hold its own story of nightmares come alive. The girls in Reverend Samuel Parris's household, you hear, have begun convulsing, claiming to be pricked by invisible pins and tormented by unseen hands. What starts as a personal affliction quickly spirals. Neighbors gossip, grudges surface, and accusations of witchcraft fly like sparks from a fire. In this world, a restless night, an odd dream, or an unusual cough can be interpreted as a sign of dark magic. Historians still argue whether the girls were victims of mass hysteria, psychological illness, or manipulative theatrics, but standing here, it feels terrifyingly plausible that any one of these explanations could ignite chaos. You watch a woman clutching her child as she hurries past, muttering prayers under her breath. Fear is contagious. It spreads faster than the winter chill. A man stops to whisper that his crops have failed because a witch cursed them, while another claims his livestock speak in tongues during the night. These accusations are rarely neutral. They are entwined with family disputes, land conflicts, and personal animosities. The line between superstition and social enforcement is blurred. You tug at your nightcap, realizing that the ritualized sleep and vigilance of the medieval world have taken on a darker, more communal dimension here. Sleeplessness becomes both symptom and catalyst. Nighttime in Salem is not quiet. Doors slam, candles gutter, and the wind carries the murmured prayers and frantic whispers of villagers awake in terror. Dreams and nightmares fuel suspicion, and any unusual behavior is instantly politicized. You see a young girl pointing frantically at the darkened corners of her room, eyes wide, claiming she sees a specter. The adults nod solemnly, taking notes, weighing testimony. Spectral evidence, the legal term for visions and apparitions, is shockingly accepted in the courtrooms, creating an environment where guilt is nearly impossible to disprove. You probably won't survive the logic of this system. Even innocence becomes a dangerous commodity. You wander further and hear about Giles Corey, An elderly farmer pressed to death under stones for refusing to enter a plea. The horror of the trials isn't just the executions, it's the way fear warps communities. Friends turn on friends. Children accuse neighbors, and superstition takes precedence over reason. The atmosphere is thick with tension, a palpable sense of collective dread. Even a faint cough or a sudden movement in the shadows can spark panic as the townspeople internalize the belief that the night is crawling with invisible threats. You step onto a small bridge overlooking a creek, the water reflecting the flickering candlelight from nearby homes. The cold air bites your cheeks, but it's nothing compared to the chill of suspicion. People move like ghosts themselves, haunted not by spirits, but by each other. The hysteria escalates at night, when vigilance is heightened and rational thought is dulled by fatigue. Sleep is fragmented, segmented by prayer, worry, and the need to monitor the behavior of children or neighbors. Even the act of sleeping becomes politicized. A peaceful night could be misinterpreted as complicity with dark forces. You probably won't survive long if you don't learn the subtle dance of appearances, prayers, and whispered denials. Protective rituals, crosses by the bed, spoken charms, or shared vigils are as important as social alliances. You notice families gathering together, not just for warmth, but for safety in numbers, a communal defense against both supernatural and human threats. Night here is a landscape of psychological warfare, where fear feeds on itself, growing larger with every creak, groan, or coughing fit. Despite the palpable terror, you also notice strange resilience. Children whisper reassuringly to each other. Elders recite prayers that steady the nerves, and neighbors cautiously watch over each other. Sleep, though fitful and haunted, is navigated with strategy, ingenuity, and ritual. You reflect on how communal sleeplessness can act as both punishment and protection, a tool to maintain order, enforce belief, and channel anxiety into shared narratives. As dawn approaches, the fog thins slightly, revealing the modest houses and the people who have survived the night's paranoid rhythms. The witching hour fades, but its echoes linger. The terror of the unknown, the fragility of social cohesion under pressure, and the way sleepless nights can transform both dream and waking life into instruments of suspicion and control. You breathe slowly, realizing that history is alive here, threaded through the collective anxieties of a community where night and fear are inseparable. You awaken once more, but the chill of Salem is replaced by the sun-baked streets and marble columns of ancient Rome. The air smells faintly of dust, oil, and the tang of political tension. You find yourself moving through a city alive with chatter, merchants calling, senators debating, and the distant clatter of chariot wheels on stone. Here, night is less about fear and superstition, and more about strategy, influence, and power. And at the center of it all stands Fulvia, woman whose restless ambition ensures that she never truly sleeps. At least, not in the sense of surrendering to domestic expectation. You follow her as she strides through the forum, her expression sharp, her gaze calculating. Fulvia was married to 3 powerful Menclaeus Pulcher, Gaius, Scribonius, Curio, and Mark Antony, and she wielded influence with astonishing skill. Unlike most women of her time, she refused to remain in the background, attending to only domestic duties. Instead, she orchestrated political alliances, public demonstrations, and even uprisings, her energy spilling across the city like wildfire. Historians still argue whether her actions were purely opportunistic or genuinely motivated by civic duty. But the results are clear. She shaped events in a way few men could ignore. Nighttime in Rome is different from the shadowed fears of medieval Europe or Salem. The city hums with intrigue long after the sun sets. Scrolls are read by candlelight. Conspiratorial whispers echo in alleyways. And letters are drafted and delivered under the cover of darkness. Fulvia thrives in this restless rhythm. You watch as she paces through a villa, consulting advisors, planning the movement of troops, and managing the distribution of funds and favors. You probably won't survive the sheer intensity of her energy if you tried to keep pace. But there's a strange allure in observing her tireless agency. Even sleep, when it comes, is a tactical pause. Fulvia understands the value of segmented rest. Brief, strategic naps punctuate her nights, allowing her to wake refreshed enough to respond to crises, deliver speeches, or attend secret meetings. The rest of Rome sleeps in more conventional patterns, but Fulvia operates on a schedule dictated by ambition and opportunity, not by circadian rhythm. Her nightshirts are simple, practical garments, allowing freedom of movement as she consults documents or reviews maps. In a sense, her personal nocturnal discipline mirrors the segmented sleep patterns of medieval times, yet with a far more calculated purpose. You watch as she organizes a public demonstration, convincing citizens to rally in support of Mark Antony, ensuring loyalty through patronage and carefully orchestrated spectacle. Fulvia's influence is tangible. She commands attention not by brute force, but through persuasion, charisma, and shrewd maneuvering. Ancient historians often vilified her as power-hungry, labeling her ambition as unnatural for a woman. Yet modern interpretations reveal a nuanced figure, a woman navigating a patriarchal system with intelligence, resilience, and strategic foresight. As you shadow her movements, you see the personal sacrifices behind her restless energy. Nights spent planning are nights away from family leisure, from comfort, from conventional domesticity. Yet these sleepless hours carve her reputation into history. She negotiates with soldiers, oversees the allocation of funds, and manages intricate family alliances. Dreams and omens might not guide her, as in Salem, but tactical foresight, awareness of social perception, and relentless calculation do. Her restlessness becomes a tool, a way to seize opportunities that others miss while they sleep. Even in moments of solitude, Fulvia's mind is active. She reflects on past losses, anticipates potential betrayals, and calculates political moves that will resonate for decades. You probably won't survive the intensity of such a life if you tried to emulate it. Yet there's a hypnotic fascination in seeing ambition so thoroughly embodied. Nights are not restful in Rome. They are arenas for thought, negotiation, and preparation. The same moonlight that might inspire fear in Salem instead illuminates her strategies, casting her shadow long across the political landscape. You notice that Fulvia also manipulates symbolism and ritual to reinforce her power. Public appearances, garments, and gestures carry layered meaning. A carefully timed speech, the arrangement of a banquet, even the way she positions herself in a processional contribute to her image as both formidable and authoritative. Sleep, segmented or brief, supports these displays by maintaining her presence and energy. Historians still debate how much of her fame was due to personal brilliance versus the political advantage of her husband's. But there is no question that her restless nights helped cement a legacy that outlived many male contemporaries. As dawn nears, you watch Fulvia retire briefly, her eyelids heavy, yet her mind refusing complete rest. You can almost feel the pulse of Roman ambition thrumming beneath her skin, a rhythm that shapes city, empire, and history itself. Even in sleep, she is strategic dreaming of alliances, potential rebellions, and political maneuvers. Unlike the haunted dreams of Salem or the disciplined chants of the monastery, her nocturnal hours are calculated, purposeful, and driven by relentless desire for influence. By the time morning light spills across the marble streets, Fulvia is already on the move again, letters in hand, instructions ready, her energy unstoppable. You step back and marvel at the sheer human capacity for ambition, realizing that restless nights, whether haunted by superstition, disciplined by devotion, or driven by political ambition, have always shaped the contours of history. The echoes of these nights ripple forward, connecting her to the sleepless eyes of villagers, monks, and protesters across time. You blink, and the marble columns of Rome dissolve into the humid, restless streets of Washington, D.C. August 28, 1963. The city hums with an energy that is almost tangible, a mixture of hope, tension, and exhaustion. Thousands have traveled from across the country, some on buses that rattled through the night, others on trains where sleep was fitful and short. You probably won't survive the cacophony of anticipation if you try to absorb every whispered conversation, every drumbeat of footsteps, every shuffling of tired bodies. But you move forward anyway, drawn into the rhythm of history in motion. The night before the March on Washington is alive. Campgrounds outside the city are dotted with flickering lanterns, and hotel lobbies are packed with weary activists, hunched over maps, notes, and speeches. People talk quietly in clusters, strategizing for tomorrow, while nerves and fatigue compete for dominance. Historians still argue whether the sheer scale of the march could have been organized without meticulous planning, but witnessing it now, it feels like a perfect storm of logistics, faith, and courage. Every whispered plan, every shared prayer, every nervous laugh contributes to a collective heartbeat that keeps the city awake and alive. You wander past makeshift kitchens where volunteers serve coffee and sandwiches, the aroma of strong brew mingling with the humid summer air. Small groups huddle together, singing freedom songs to calm frayed nerves. Some people pace the sidewalks, eyes alert, rehearsing speeches or silently counting steps. Sleep is secondary here. It's a luxury, traded for readiness, vigilance, and the electric buzz of expectation. You can almost feel history itself bending forward, leaning on these restless nights, demanding participation from everyone who believes in justice. The streets are alive with whispered warnings. "Don't let the guards see your signs yet," one activist says. "Keep the marchers hydrated. We don't know how long tomorrow will last." Another adds, "There's a palpable tension between fear and excitement, as if every person is balancing on the edge of history. You probably won't survive, ignoring the collective anxiety, the undercurrent of potential conflict, the government's surveillance, the unknown reactions of the crowd, but you find yourself mesmerized. Every small action, every careful preparation carries monumental weight. Even in the small, crowded rooms where organizers plot logistics, the energy is infectious. BayardRustin.com, but focused, goes over route maps, anticipating bottlenecks and crowd surges. Philip Randolph discusses press coverage and safety measures, emphasizing non-violent discipline. Sleep, for them, is optional. Vigilance and foresight are paramount. You notice people taking brief naps in chairs, newspapers draped over heads, only to spring awake at the sound of a distant shout. The entire city seems to exist in a state of half-conscious preparation, not unlike the medieval villagers awaiting the night's terror. Except now, the anticipation is righteous, collective, and purposeful. Outside, the streets are dotted with signs, tents, and banners. Young and old alike, black and white, gather in shared anticipation, forming a mosaic of unity in the warm summer night. Conversations flow between hopes and fears. What if it doesn't go peacefully? What if the crowd isn't heard? Yet underneath the anxiety, there is resilience and unspoken vow that this march will change the course of history. The restless energy mirrors the segmented, vigilant sleep of medieval societies. Yet here, sleeplessness serves a higher purpose: justice, visibility, and solidarity. You move through a church basement where volunteers are sewing banners. The rhythmic click of needles on fabric is almost hypnotic, a nocturnal drumbeat of activism. A young singer hums a freedom song softly, her voice barely audible but persistent, threading through the air like a calming spell. Even here, shadows play tricks on tired eyes, and fears creep in: fear of violence, fear of failure, fear of systemic resistance. But the community pushes forward, keeping exhaustion at bay. Historians still argue whether this momentum was spontaneous or meticulously orchestrated. But for you, the sensation is immediate, tangible, and overwhelming. By the small hours, the city hums with a quiet insistence. People lie wherever they can, leaning against walls, slumped in chairs, heads on backpacks, eyes flickering open at every sound. The air is thick with expectation, a dense mixture of sweat, anticipation, and hope. You probably won't survive the magnitude of emotions here without feeling your own pulse quicken, but the experience is unforgettable. Each sleepless face tells a story of courage, of determination, and of faith in the power of collective action. You pause near the reflecting pool, watching the moonlight shimmer across the water. Voices carry softly across the empty stretches, prayers and conversations overlapping in a strange harmony. This night is more than preparation. It is a living meditation on hope, fear, and the human capacity to endure exhaustion for a cause greater than oneself. Every sleepless hour has meaning, every restless step a contribution to the march that will echo through decades. As dawn begins to brush the sky with pale light, you sense the weight of what is coming. The streets are still alive, though quieter now, the city holding its breath. The restless night has woven together determination, anticipation, and meticulous planning into a tapestry of action-ready energy. Tomorrow, that energy will transform into a living, moving, unified call for justice that no force can easily ignore. Tonight, you witness the power of a society awake, prepared, and refusing to rest until the promise of equality begins to take shape. You step into the sweltering August morning, the crowd around you vibrating with anticipation and purpose. Over 250,000 people have gathered on the National Mall, a sea of bodies stretching as far as the eye can see, their voices mingling into a low, humming heartbeat that thrums through the earth. You probably won't survive the sheer scale of humanity here without being swept up in it. Yet every step forward makes you feel more alive, more connected, more aware that history is happening not in books, but beneath your very feet. The scent of summer heat mixes with sweat, coffee, and the occasional waft of newspaper ink from hastily read morning editions. Children sit on parents' shoulders, elders stand with arms crossed, and young activists clutch signs that demand justice. The air shivers with nervous energy. Excitement mingles with fear, because change, like a storm, can never be predicted. Historians still argue whether the impact of the march lay more in the immediate legislation it influenced, or in the symbolic power of mass presence. But standing here, the answer feels obvious. It is both. Simultaneously, impossible to separate. Your eyes find him, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., standing at the podium. Yet radiant, a figure both grounded and transcendent. The world hushes, even though tens of thousands of people surround you. The rhythm of his breathing and the cadence of his speech seem to merge with the pulse of the crowd. You probably won't survive listening without feeling your own chest tighten, your pulse echoing the collective heartbeat, because words this powerful are not just heard, they are internalized, felt in every fiber of your being. He begins, and the words rise and fall like a wave, gentle yet unstoppable. You feel the cadence, the rhetorical music of his voice pulling you forward, urging you to imagine a world that has yet to exist. He speaks not just to the crowd, but through it. Each listener becomes part of the narrative, each breath a stitch in the tapestry of freedom he is weaving. The power of his oratory is electric, almost palpable, and you notice how his metaphors, repetition, and pauses work like hypnotic guides through the collective consciousness. As you listen, you sense the layers of struggle embedded in the moment. This dream is not merely abstract. It is rooted in centuries of oppression, courage, and relentless activism. You remember the restless nights of the activists, the whispers of the monks, the terrified sleepwalkers, and even Fulvia's midnight strategies. All of these echoes converge here, showing that restless energy, vigilance, and courage are the threads that connect those who shape history. Historians still argue whether a single speech can alter the trajectory of a movement, but the energy around you argues definitively, yes, it can. Around you, people sway, some weeping quietly, some whispering prayers, others lifting hands in quiet affirmation. You probably won't survive being unaffected. The shared hope is infectious, and you feel it stir something deep inside, an echo of the centuries of sleepless nights you've witnessed in this journey. Every tear, every whispered affirmation, every clasped hand amplifies the resonance of Dr. King's words. You sense that the speech is more than rhetoric. It is a collective act of imagination, an invitation to envision and claim a better world. The dream is tangible in the faces around you, determination etched into wrinkles, youthful hope gleaming in eyes wide with possibility, and the calm resolve of those who have endured decades of injustice. Sleep, fatigue, and fear have all been sacrificed in preparation for this moment, turning every restless night into fuel for the morning's triumph. As the final words resonate, you notice the crowd collectively holding its breath, suspended in a moment that feels eternal. You probably won't survive the intensity of this shared consciousness without feeling a profound connection to every restless night that led here. The dream pulses in rhythm with your own heartbeat, a living testament to human perseverance, courage, and the power of vision. You exhale slowly, letting the magnitude of the moment wash over you. Around you, The crowd begins to hum softly, the voices rising as a gentle undercurrent beneath the fading echoes of the speech. You realize that history is not just remembered, it is felt, breathed, and carried forward, one sleepless, determined soul at a time. Standing here, you are not merely observing, you are participating, a thread in the vast, vibrant fabric of humanity striving toward freedom. You step back from the sea of faces on the National Mall, letting the echoes of Dr. King's voice linger in your mind like a soft, insistent pulse. The hum of the crowd, the shuffle of tired feet, the whispered prayers, all these fragments meld into a quiet reflection. You probably survive the weight of connection without pausing to consider the centuries you traversed tonight. The cold monasteries, the flea-ridden beds, Salem's haunted streets, and Rome's sunlit forums. Through it all, a thread runs clear. Sleep, power, and fear are never truly separate. They intertwine, shaping the lives of those who act and the dreams of those who endure. You realize that restless nights, whether imposed by superstition, ambition, or the call for justice, have been catalysts for action. Medieval villagers, waking in the middle of the night to pray or check on the fire, harnessed vigilance as survival. Monks rising from matins exemplified discipline that transcended comfort. Salem's terrorized citizens, haunted by specters of fear. An accusation inadvertently shaped early American legal consciousness through sheer human endurance. And Fulvia, her sleepless nights spent navigating alliances and revolts, prove that ambition often thrives in the quiet hours when the world sleeps. Historians still argue how much individual restlessness truly influences history. But standing here, you sense that it is undeniable. You think about the collective energy of 1963, how hundreds of thousands of people sacrificed sleep to bring their vision to life. The night before the March on Washington was thick with preparation, uncertainty, and hope in energy you can almost feel vibrating beneath your skin. That sleeplessness wasn't aimless. It was purposeful, charged with conviction. Dreams and planning, vigilance and courage, these forces converge to produce moments that echo for generations. Each restless night, each sleepless vigil, is a seed that grows into societal change. Fear, too, has always been a powerful motivator. The night terrors of Salem, the danger lurking in every political move in Rome, the anxiety of medieval winters, and pest's fear wakes us, forces us to act, and shapes the strategies we employ. Yet fear is rarely destructive alone. Paired with vision, discipline, and courage, it can illuminate paths that comfort and complacency would obscure. You probably survive, ignoring the subtle lessons this juxtaposition teaches. Those who master fear and harness their sleepless energy often guide the course of history, while those who surrender entirely to it merely endure. Power is inseparable from these nights. Fulvia's calculated strategies, Dr. King's orchestrated activism, and even the monks' disciplined prayers reveal that influence is often born in the hours when most would sleep. History favors those who rise, literally or metaphorically, while others remain dormant. The quiet diligence of the night, the whispered conversations, the meticulous planning, these are the unseen engines of change. You notice how the human mind, sharpened by vigilance, imagination, or anxiety, can convert sleeplessness into a tool of survival, resistance, or revolution. As you trace these patterns, a profound interconnectedness emerges. Sleep, fear, and power are not isolated forces. They shape identity, society, and legacy. The restless nights of one era ripple forward, influencing the courage, vision, and vigilance of another. You probably won't survive discounting the importance of these echoes, for they are the invisible threads that bind human experience across centuries. You pause, imagining all the individuals who have labored, watched, prayed, feared, and dreamed while the world slept. Some rose to power, some persevered quietly, and some became cautionary tales. Yet every night, every vigil, every sleepless hour contributed to the shape of history. Your journey through time has shown that the night is not merely a pause in life. It is an incubator for ambition, resilience, and transformation. The realization settles softly, almost like the weight of a blanket. History is alive in these nights, alive in those who refuse to rest in fear or comfort, and alive in the dreams that refuse to be contained. You probably want to survive ignoring this truth. The story of humanity is written in the hours when the world sleeps, and those awake, daring, and restless carry the pen. You finally return to your own quiet bedroom, centuries and experiences behind you, the soft glow of a nightlight casting gentle shadows across familiar walls. The hum of the fan fills the air like a lullaby, steady and calming, a modern counterpoint to the restless nights you've witnessed through history. You probably won survive reflecting too long without feeling the pull of exhaustion settle into your muscles. Yet it's a comforting exhaustion, the kind that comes after witnessing courage, perseverance, and the extraordinary lengths humans will go to shape their world. As you lie back, the memory of medieval villagers scratching at fleas and whispering prayers mixes with the silent devotion of monks rising in icy darkness. The terrified whispers of Salem, the tireless ambition of Fulvia pacing her Roman villa, and the collective heartbeat of those who gathered on the National Mall all swirl together. You notice a thread weaving through these disparate moments. Restlessness is rarely wasted. It manifests as vigilance, as strategic planning, as defiance of fear, as unwavering hope. The night is both witness and accomplice to humanity's most profound acts of resilience. The sensation is soothing as you close your eyes. You imagine history's restless nights folding into one another. Each sleepless vigil, each anxious whisper, each tactical strategy becoming a quiet chorus that whispers through time. These echoes have birthed justice, sparked revolutions, and nurtured the courage to confront the impossible. You probably want to survive, ignoring the subtle lesson. The night is not simply a pause from life, but a hidden forge where human potential is tested, sharpened, and honed. You feel the tension of your own day ease, the weight of centuries lifting like mist. Your breathing slows, synchronized with the imagined rhythms of those who once stayed awake for prayer, planning, protest, or survival. The restless energy of humanity fades into a soft, comforting lull. You drift on this shared human cadence, carrying the understanding that courage and change often rise while the world sleeps, that fear can be transformed into action, and that dreams, both literal and metaphorical, hold the power to reshape everything. Finally, you sink fully into your mattress, the fan's soft hum blending with your own pulse. History has whispered its secrets to you tonight, and you are ready to rest, cradled in the knowledge that the world has always been moved by those awake, daring, and vigilant. You exhale slowly, letting the centuries of restless nights lull you into calm, peaceful sleep.